You can access the main transport window in Pro Tools by going to the Window drop-down menu and choosing Transport. You can also see that there is a shortcut associated with it, Command on Mac and 1 on your 10 keypad, or Control and 1 on your PC. So we'll go ahead and open the transport window. The first thing you'll notice is that a lot of the data is identical to other data that was up in the Edit toolbar in the Edit window, and that's true. So the transport window is divided up into three sections: the transport area, or transport controls, the counters, and the MIDI controls. Also, we have a transport window pop-up menu that allows you to select or deselect specific items that you may want to or not want to see. You can see I'm turning on the counters, turning back on this information. There's also synchronization controls that you may want to alter. Usually I leave those off. So those are the types of things that are found under the transport window pop-up menu. Also, you'll see that you can have expanded transport, and usually I turn that on. I also have that on up here as well in the Edit window, which we've already talked about. You'll see I have the expanded transport on by looking at the Edit window pop-up menu. If I turn that off, you'll see that a lot of these items that are similar down here have disappeared now. So I have the real estate on my screen. I go ahead and leave that on because I prefer having this information there. For that reason, I don't use the transport window much because all of this information that's on the transport window is contained in my Edit toolbar in my Edit window. You can also change how the transport window is viewed by clicking on the View drop-down menu, going down to Transport, and you'll see that those items are also listed here that were also listed under the transport window pop-up menu. So two locations from which you can alter how the transport window is viewed. The counter section in the transport window is where you can see the location of your cursor in Pro Tools. So, if I just go up here and press play, you'll see that the counter is changing and following the beats and bars. You can change the data that's being displayed on the counter by clicking on this disclosure triangle to the right of the counter. You can see we could display minutes or seconds. So right now we're 5, 6, 7 seconds into our song. Or we could display beats and bars, or the time code, or even how many samples have transpired since the beginning of our piece. Record like this, and you'll be able to see. Most of the time I leave this on beats and bars. You'll also see that there is a sub counter down here. So this gives you the option of displaying two different types of timelines. So here you can see not only am I displaying bars and beats, but I'm also displaying minutes and seconds. I find this to be very useful, especially if you're working on a timed piece of music, like a promo piece of music for TV or radio that needs to be 30 seconds long. You can use this secondary counter or sub-counter to display that additional information. You can also click on each of these and choose the bar number. I'm using the number 10 on the 10 keypad and then hitting enter. And that will take you to that specific location. You can also do the same thing down here. If you do enter data in the transport window, your cursor will be placed at that location. So you can see here, if I go to measure 5, you can see my cursor is now here. If I go to measure 7, the cursor will move and is placed at measure 7. The section of the transport window over here that deals with all of the MIDI data, we're going to talk about a little later. There are also additional windows where you can do editing on your data besides the Edit window. And those two windows are called the MIDI Editor window and the Score Editor window. And you can find those windows under the Window drop-down menu. But first, in order to see those windows, we have to actually add a MIDI track so that they're visible. So now, Window drop-down menu and the MIDI Editor and Score Editor windows. So let's look at those. You can see there's also shortcuts associated with those windows as well. So MIDI editor, open that window and you can see it's a full-sized piano scrolled horizontal view of your MIDI data. You'll notice that there is also tracks lists as well as group lists, and also these windows additionally have the tracks list drop-down menu and the groups list drop-down menu, just like the other windows did. This window also has a MIDI editor pop-up menu, so you can change how your display looks and select a few other parameters, like if you want this window to scroll along with Pro Tools and follow the cursor, or if you would like it to remain stationary. The MIDI editor gives you a scrolling view of your MIDI data. So if I go ahead and play my MIDI keyboard right now, you can see that I'm recording some of these MIDI notes that I'm playing. You're not hearing them, but I am entering the data. And now you can take these and you can actually maneuver these around, change their pitches, change their duration, all kinds of things. So this is a great window to use for editing your MIDI data. The score editor can also be useful if you want to view your music as actual music notation. So let's take a look at that window real briefly. You can get to it again the same way by selecting the window drop-down menu and going to Score Editor. You'll see it opens a separate window and shows you the same data that we have here, but in an actual musical score, instead of just showing you the MIDI notes. If you don't own a copy of Sibelius or some other music notation software, this is a good way to print some of your MIDI data to be performed at a later time by others. Tooltips is a concept that a lot of applications use where if you hover your mouse over a specific button or icon, if you hold it there long enough, the function of that button or the details associated with that button will be displayed. So if I go down here and go over this button and then just leave my mouse there, you can see it tells me this is the link, timeline, and edit selection button. If I move it over here, it tells me that's the mirrored MIDI editing button. The pencil tool, the scrubber tool, the smart tool. So it shows you what all these tools are called. And a lot of times it's just a good idea to wander around in Pro Tools and let your mouse hover over things so you can learn the names of individual buttons and icons and then learn about what they do. We've already mentioned the track list pop-up. We mentioned the group list pop-up menu. For some reason, if you would like this not to appear, you can go to your Setup menu and down to Preferences, to your Display tab, and right here you can see Tooltips. You could turn off function so you can't see the function or name of a button, and you could also turn off the details. So details are things like if you hover over a track name and it has a long track name, it will give you that entire track name. So for example, I have renamed this track Piano to this particular piece. Kind of not a very good name, but for the purposes of what we're trying to learn, it works. I could hover over that particular name, and because I have selected details, it will show me the entire track name for that track, because it won't all fit right up here in the actual track name area itself. If I turn that off, details, it won't show me that track name. That's it for this video. In the final video, we're going to cover the edit tool functions. We're going to go over a lot of the specifics of each of the editing tools that we mentioned earlier in the edit toolbar, as well as the edit modes, shuffle, slip, spot, and grid, and the timescales and rulers area of the edit window, as well as the details for the MIDI control features, including wait for note, metronome, count off options, etc. So we'll see you then.